Welcome to Scrapbooking Beautiful Layouts by Lockie Creations. Hey crafty friends, it's Lockie Creations again, giving you a sneak peek of how I will create this layout. This layout is the feature of today, but before I get into the layout, I want to talk about this tool. This We Are Memory Keepers Magnetic Twist Trimmer. So I recently purchased this tool from Michael's on a 30% coupon, and it was something that I had been eyeing for a while, so I was very happy to get this on sale. However, I will be soon returning this tool. So let's talk about the tool a little bit. It has these 8 different dials that you're supposed to be able to choose to trim out all of your different shapes. It has these 8 dials that each dial cuts out a different shape. The one that I was particularly interested in is the zigzag pattern as well as the scallop. So let's go ahead and open it up. Now you do get each one of these dials, and it also comes with a straight cutter. This little pin that I just showed is the way that you hold it in place. I guess you can slide that in and out to get the different dials, to change the dials. Okay, so this tool, unbeknownst to me when I purchased this, is not a tool that you can easily use alone. You have to purchase this magnetic cutting board, which is just as equally, if not more expensive than the ruler itself. So being that that was the case, I absolutely was not about to purchase yet another expensive tool to use with this expensive tool. So anyway, I did not know about the ruler that you needed when I bought this, so I was attempting to use the tool with my regular self-healing cutting mat, and it is an epic fail. So I do not recommend this tool unless you want to spend around $50 to have this cutter. Okay, so now let's talk about my design. I'm using this paper pack from Hobby Lobby, which features this beautiful spring, summertime, bee-inspired paper. You get stickers, alphabet stickers, even some chipboard pieces, and this beautiful yellow and orangish themed paper, which features florals and bees. So very pretty paper pack. This is not cardstock heavy paper. This is actual thin scrapbook paper. So I've selected some photographs of my daughter and her pet rabbit that were recently took this summer 2022, and I'm going to use these papers to create a custom background. So the first thing that I did was to go ahead, and because that little tool that you pin that you have to put inside that ruler is so tiny, I figured I better put it in a Ziploc bag before it gets lost. So I got a Ziploc bag and put the excess cutters in there. But again, I will be returning this because it just did not work to my needs. Anyway, so what I want to do for my background, I want to create these triangles for the shape that I'm going to do. So I want to have triangles in these corresponding papers to be on one side of my page to create a custom background. So I'm just using my Walmart Walmart cutting mat that has these rulers to try to figure out, what shape I want to make of my triangle. And you can see me right here attempting to just use this cutter, and you can see how it's sliding all over the place because, again, I didn't realize at first that it's a magnetic cutter. And so yeah, I struggled with this, and yeah, it did not cut well for me at all. So you're going to see me abandoning this and going to grab my standard or my already purchased paper cutter. I was trying to use the ruler, my just plastic ruler, to line up the shape, but this thing is just not a good cutter without the magnetic board. And because I refuse to pay that much for the magnetic board on top of buying this tool that I already am not satisfied with, no. So here's where I bring in my normal paper trimmer. So I'm cutting each one of these squares in a size of, I believe, a 3 by 3. And these are going to be the triangles that are going to go across my page. So I'm selecting each one of those papers. What I did was I cut the 12" by a 12 by 3. And now I'm just cutting each one of those 12 by 3 pieces of paper into 3 by 3s. So now I am arranging my squares in the shape of triangles around my page to create my custom background. And I'm being very careful not to place 2 yellows together or 2 of the orangish corals together or 2 of the grays. There's the yellows almost look similar, but as you can see, the yellow that's on the right is actually more yellow, where the yellow florals that are on the left have that hint of the orange coral color. So I'm just placing those kind of where I want them to go on my page. And now I'm going to go ahead and tape each one down just so that I can have that in place, because I know this is the basic placement that I want. And again, so once I get that all laid out and glued on, I'm going to trim the excess off the edges. And I strategically did not start to put them all on paper because I want them to give that illusion that they come off the page. So this is the basic design. Well, next I wanted to use this bright yellowish gold paper to do about a 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch, almost like a ribbon that I want to create. And I was attempting to do this with the zigzag trimmer or the scalloped trimmer. And this is where I just really realized that, first of all, this cutter will not cut through this heavyweight cardstock. And I tried, and you can see me struggling. And again, because I did not know at the time that I needed to buy a magnetic mat to use this, I wasted quite a bit of this paper trying to do this process. And it just did not work. You can see once again that the trimmer is moving before I could cut. It's not holding it in place, and it is not even going through the paper. So I was not happy with this tool at all. Not at all, because who knew that you had to buy the mat? I don't even believe the store that I purchased this from even sold the magnetic mat. Even if I wanted to go ahead and buy that in order to use this tool, it was not available. So this was definitely a thumbs down. So yeah, I was very, very, very disappointed with this purchase. You know, with me and the We Are Memory Keepers tools, it's a hit or miss. There are some things that they make that I love, like the punch border font maker or whatever you call it. I love that tool. I love my little pen that allows me to do stitching. This thing, not so much. The little tool that you use to weed out your die cuts, I don't like that one. That one unraveled. So there are definitely some misses that I've had with We Are Memory Keepers. And then some of my favorite tools have come from We Are Memory Keepers. So I'm not endorsed by this company at all. I'm just a scrapbooker who loves scrapbook things. So I'm giving my honest opinion of this product. This product I am not impressed with at all. And again, I will be returning this to the store that I purchased it at. So again, I'm just trying to, I got the bright idea that maybe if I bring this is where I realized there's those black strips that are behind the ruler, they are magnets. And so I tried to use my make art board to kind of, and that, it didn't work. It just did not work. So here I was trying to kind of salvage this tool, but nothing that I did worked. As you can see, I kind of got a cut from using my magnetic board, but the problem with that is that there needs to be some thin level of self-healing mat on top of it in order to protect your blade. And so, yeah, it still was moving because my magnetic mat was not strong enough to hold that ruler in place. So again, I would not have purchased this if I knew it was so complicated and that I would have to purchase another expensive thing. So now I am going to attempt to use my zigzag or border trim scissors after I've abandoned that tool. I figured I'd use my scissors to kind of just, what I want to do is I almost want to give my page the effect that I'm weaving these strips along the edges so it'll look almost like a basket weave. But why did I have such a hard time cutting out these little strips? So here I'm just going through and I'm just measuring out kind of the width that I want each of those strips to be. And then I'm going to go in, or attempt to go in, with my normal little zigzag paper strip scissors, and those worked. But this was just a process. Using those, my hands start to hurt. So I'm like, this just doesn't work. So I'm trying to bring back this tool and trying to kind of make it work. And you can see I'm putting several passes through this thing to try to cut with it. And it just is not working. I'm putting so much pressure, and as you can see how it's moving, I was probably saying some profanities at this point because I was just not happy whatsoever with this tool. I just spent $25 on this thing, and why is it a piece of crap? It is barely, it's not cutting. Head explode. So that was definitely a lesson learned. So at this point, I've used like all of my dark color paper. So I said, well, let me try a thinner paper. Maybe it's just that paper is too thick and it just won't work. The cutter still doesn't cut this thin paper very well without the mat. Even with me trying to use a different magnetic mat, it just, it didn't work right. So what I'll end up doing is I'll use some of those darker strips that I have down there, but it's not really going to have the same cohesive texture because some of them will have the zigzag, some of them will be from my scissors, and some will just be where I tried to use that tool. Okay, so now that I'm done fussing with that tool, so my idea is that I want to have each one of the darker strips align the edges of my triangles, just again to give it almost that basket weave effect. So I am now just going ahead and placing down those dark gold strips along the edges of each of my cuts so that I can create that basket weave effect. And this still turned out very nicely, even though I struggled so much with that trimmer tool thing crap. I still like the way that this page turned out. So I'm going to repeat this process for each one of my edges of my shapes with the dark golden paper or cardstock. And pretty soon you kind of get the point what I'm trying to do. You see this basket weave effect take place. And I'm doing some cleanup to some of the shapes that did not cut very well, just so that I can salvage them and be able to use them, because I did not want to use all of my page of that golden paper fighting with that trimmer. I'm going to try not to talk about the trimmer too much more because, again, it was a big disappointment. But, keep going, improvise. You got other tools, you make it work. So I'm just continuing with my design and continuing to place those yellow strips along each edge of each one of those triangles. And I think this really elevated the look of the page quite a bit and gave it not only another dimension, but also added some texture to my background. So I was really impressed with the technique, even though the execution did not turn out flawlessly because of, why. The results turned out very pretty on this page. So I'm just finalizing those final little corners that need a strip of that yellow golden paper there as well. And I'm just flipping it over now. And now I'm just trimming off the excess that's going over the edges. Okay, so there I have pretty much created my custom background with these triangles and this very floral, pretty bee inspired paper. Okay, so now I'm just using my brayer to just smooth everything out a little bit. And again, trimming the excess from each side. So there's my background, and it turned out very pretty. I really love the way that these papers contrast together. So I've selected these 3 photographs of, again, my daughter and her pet rabbit. And I spent so much time creating that background. My pictures are 3x5 size, so I did not want my pictures to be, actually they're 3x6. I didn't want them to be covering all of the whole page. So I've got to strategically look at how I want to place those. But right now, I just took a single sheet of that coral paper, and I'm backing my photos with that, because that is what will be my photo mat. Once I have all 3 of my photographs matted in that coral paper, my next step is going to be to figure out where I want to place them. And I'll go ahead and I'm going through my bin and I'm grabbing some tools that will help me further develop this page. So I'm roughing up the edges of all of my photos with my edge distressor tool, and I'll be figuring out what placement I want to put my pictures on the page. I like the way that the roughed edges gave those photo mats another element of detail. So that I was pleased with. And I ultimately decided that I'm going to go kind of slightly off to the right. So I will cover up a section of that photo mat that I use, but that's okay. You know, it's when you're using a lot of pictures, sometimes you just have to sacrifice the art. But I had fun making this layout outside of using that weird tool. So I'm not disappointed that I'm having to cover some of it up. The colors all blend well together, so it's still a nice layout. I think you see enough of it to get the effect. Okay, so now I'm just placing my photos where I want them to go, and I'm smoothing them out on my page. So now I'm going to go ahead and grab some stickers that I want to use to embellish and some other things. So I'm using this very common go-to for me sticker pack from Vicky Booten. And I'm just going to back some of those in white just to give it a little bit of height. And I'll turn that sticker basically into like a little chipboard, if you will. So I'm doing that. I saw these little green pieces, so I'm making some little flags by trimming the corners of them, and I will be using them. I thought that pop of green was a nice touch to bring out some of the green in the grass in my photographs. And so I'm just building little tiny clusters around my photos and grabbing little layers of paper, little flags, distressing those elements as well. And I like where I am so far, so I'm going to continue to embellish. Now I'm going through the chipboard pack that came in this set, and there's some very pretty florals. I really like that swirly piece, so I'm definitely going to use that. So I'm grabbing some of the little photo clusters and putting them around my page. This one was cute, but it was just too big for this page. So I'm just cutting off the edge of this hexagon here, and I'm going to add that on to a couple different corners. And this is just helping me build those clusters. I like this little phrase. I thought about using it. And everything has a be type of tone. Be grateful, be inspired, be this, be that. So definitely goes with the theme. Since there's a lot of bees and honey and flowers. This little swirly thing here is really cute. It's a bee kind of with the path of the bee and the pollination kind of following him. So I thought that was cute. I definitely will add that to my page in that coral color. And again, just looking through, seeing if there's any more of these florals that I want to use. I don't want to go overly busy, so I'm trying to select the kind of small things, not anything too big and bulky, because I've got this custom background that has a lot of bulk in it as well. So I don't want to overbulk the page up with stuff. So again, I'm just going through and seeing what can I use, what will work, what goes with what won't overpower my page. And using a lot of these embellishments from the paper pack. Okay, so I've added my title using this sticker. And it says busy as a bee. And I'm grabbing some sequins. It would not be a page without adding some sort of bling, right? So I have to have my bling. So I decided that I wanted to kind of add a little bit of element of stitching. I didn't want to sew those areas where I put the yellow borders around my triangles, but I want to give the illusion of stitching to some of them. So I'm going through my stamps and grabbing the stitch inspired stamp, and I'm just going to add a little bit of faux stitching on just a few of those corners here or there. Again, that just gives it another dimension of texture. And so I like these because I do have a sewing machine, but I sew in real life a lot, so I don't always want to sew on my paper. So I am also grabbing that, and I believe that color is a cracked pistachio of this distress ink and distress oxide, and I'm gonna just go ahead and start to trying to figure out which one of these stitching elements I want to use. And I'm just testing it out on a test piece of paper, and I like the way that color looks, so I'm going to go with that. So now I'm just inking up my stamp that's on a clear acrylic block, and I'm going to stamp this little border down. And I'm using a different stamp for this piece, so I'm just adding a little bit of texture on those corners with this stamp. So I'm going to just stamp in a couple random places, and there you have it. It just adds another element. So I'm happy with that. Now is where I'm selecting my stitching effect, and I'm going to do that in a darker color, a black ink. So I am inking up that stamp on that larger acrylic block and just stamping the edge, and I like the way that turned out. Again, it just gave it the effect that I just sewed it with my sewing machine in a few of those corners. So that's what I'm doing here. And I'm just covering up my picture so I don't accidentally stamp on my pictures when I grab that little section to stamp. And again, just going through a few spots around my page on where I want those stamps to be. So I'm happy with where I have that so far. And now I'm just going back through, grabbing some word phrases and different things that I think I want to use on this page. And once I get things where I like them, I'm putting them in place. And I'm happy with what I have so far. So again, just doing a little bit more embellishment, adding a few more words and sentiments around my page. This page will actually be part of a 2-page layout, but because the photos have different colors in them, when I introduce my photos that were in this scene, they have purple. So I'll be doing the second page, which will have less of that coral color, but more of the purple. So stay tuned at a later date for part 2 of this, which I will incorporate the purple photos and show you all about how I created a custom stencil using a Dollar Tree placemat. So stay tuned for that video. But for this one right now, just to finalize this page, I am just adding in a few sequins around my page. And this I am happy with. So there you have it. Here are some close-ups, please comment, like, and subscribe, and check out some of my other content. And as always, have a wonderfully blessed day.